At 9:10 on a February morning last year, the king picked up a phone and called his only sister. The call lasted 40 minutes. It settled nothing. And honestly, that nothing was the loudest thing Charles has said in years. 3 weeks before that call, that same sister walked into a room inside Windsor that almost no one alive is allowed to enter. We will get to that room. We will get to what she has been doing in it. Because that room is where the ending of this whole story is quietly being written. For nearly 30 years, the public was handed a tidy little version of this marriage. Diana was the wife, Camilla was the other woman, and Charles, we were told, was the man caught helplessly between them. That is the version that fit on a magazine cover. It was also the version that quietly let one man off the hook. Here is the part that version always skips. Charles was never trapped between two women. He stood in the middle because he chose to stand there, and he put himself in the middle, and then he stayed there for 30 years. Diana died in a Paris tunnel in August 1997. She was 36 years old. Her marriage had been finished for years before that night, and the country already knew the reason. She had said it out loud. On national television in 1995, she sat in front of a single camera and told the world there were 3 people inside her marriage. If you watched that interview the night it first aired, you remember the stillness in her voice. You remember exactly where you were sitting. She did not invent that third person. The country already knew the name. They had heard the woman's voice on the intercepted tapes back in 1993, and the year after that, they heard the man himself. He confessed on television. He kept the woman. He never once let her go. That is not gossip. That is the public record. In 1994, Charles sat for a televised documentary and admitted the affair to the entire country while his marriage was still legally alive. He did not hide. He chose to be seen choosing her. And honestly, that is the detail 30 years of soft coverage has worked very hard to blur, because there were 2 children in that house who could read. William was 11 when the tapes surfaced. He could see the front pages on the breakfast table. He could read what was being printed about his mother every single morning. According to a former member of the household, he once asked a tutor what one of those words on the page actually meant. He was 13. Whether that exact moment happened the way it was later told, who knows? But it sounds exactly like a moment a boy in that house would have lived through. That boy is now 43, and he has spent almost 3 decades watching, remembering, and saying nothing. Now here is where this stops being old family pain and starts becoming a quiet correction of history. When Queen Elizabeth died in September 2022, the Duchy of Cornwall passed from Charles to William automatically. The duchy is not a hobby. It has existed since 1337. It owns farmland across 11 counties, commercial property in London, tenant farms, mineral rights, and the Isles of Scilly. It brought in roughly £30 million in a single recent year. Every property and every decision about who is paid by it now sits under William's hand. What he did first was almost surgical. Annabelle Elliot, Camilla's younger sister, had worked across duchy properties for nearly 20 years under Charles. Then she simply stopped appearing in the records. No statement, no row, just gone. And the people who replaced her were not neutral hires. They were William's own circle, loyal to him and to no one else. The royal commentators understood the message instantly, but the money is only half of it. The other half is Anne And honestly, you cannot understand any of this without first understanding her. Long before Camilla married Charles, and even before she married Andrew Parker Bowles, there was a year in the early 1970s when Anne herself was the woman Andrew was seeing. The press wrote about it at the time. She was a princess. He was a charming cavalry officer. The romance was real, it was public, and then it ended. And the woman he eventually married was Camilla. That is not speculation. It is in the record. People close to Anne say she has carried it the way she carries everything else, not as heartbreak, as information. So when Diana arrived in this family in 1981, Anne already recognized the pattern. She had watched a version of it land on her own life years earlier. She knew exactly how comfortable Camilla had always been, taking what other women had. Now, 3 decades later, Anne is the only senior royal in that building who holds both pieces, the institutional memory and the personal reason. And she has quiet access to a room very few people on earth can enter. It is called the Royal Archives, held inside the Round Tower at Windsor. No documentary crews, no researchers without senior approval. Inside are the letters, diaries, and private memoranda of the family across the entire 20th century, including the years the marriage fell apart in slow, documented, contemporaneous detail. Who knew what? Who knew when? Whose version of events was protected and at whose cost? Staff have given the work an informal name. They are calling it the Windsor Reset. Whether that name is real or shorthand someone invented, the work itself is reportedly happening. And whatever comes out of it will not be a leaked letter or a press statement. That is not how Anne operates. What comes out of it is the official memory of this family being calmly rewritten by the one person holding the keys to the room where the original is kept. Anne handles the past, William handles the future. And here is the part that genuinely lands. She took the marriage, Diana kept the meaning. Now look, we cannot independently verify every conversation a boy may or may not have had with friends at 16. Royal gossip has a way of turning speculation into accepted memory over time. But here is what is not speculation. The man who walked behind that coffin now runs the most valuable royal estate in Britain. And what was said behind palace doors, we cannot know. What was done in public, we can. And the public record is unforgiving. So let me take you back to the public record on the one person everyone keeps leaving out, the late Queen. For years, Elizabeth kept this relationship at arm's length, and she did it where the whole country could see. When Charles and Camilla finally married in 2005, the Queen did not attend the civil ceremony at the Guildhall. She stayed away from the legal act itself. She came only to the blessing afterward. That was not an accident of scheduling. That was a sovereign drawing a quiet line in front of her people. For 17 years, she held that line. And then in 2022, she crossed it herself. In her public message marking 70 years on the throne, the Queen said it was her sincere wish that Camilla be known as Queen Consort. With one sentence, the woman who had kept her distance for nearly 2 decades handed Camilla the one thing distance had always denied her. The title, and honestly, this is the question history is now asking, and it is not a kind one. Was that final blessing an old mother's mercy toward her son? Or was it the single decision that guaranteed Diana's wound would never be allowed to close? Nobody alive can tell you what was in the Queen's heart. But the consequence is on the record. The country was asked to call the third person in Diana's marriage a queen. So this is no longer a story about one weak man. It is a story about two choices: a son who put himself in the middle and never moved, and a mother who, at the very end, signed her name to it. That is the double weight history is now sorting out, and only one person in that family is in a position to lift it. Now, here is where the patient plan stops being preparation and starts becoming execution. And it started in early 2025. That year, Charles signed paperwork extending the authority to grant royal warrants to both William and Catherine. Warrants are not decorations. They are the formal stamp the Crown places on a business or institution, the way the monarchy says publicly that something is approved. Monarchs have guarded that power for centuries. Handing it to William and Catherine while Charles still sits on the throne was a public signal about exactly where the Crown's weight is being moved. Then, more quietly, came the patronages. When the late Queen died, she held hundreds of them, and they have been reallocated ever since. Several that were reportedly being lined up for Camilla simply went elsewhere. No announcement, just a list, with her name missing where her name was meant to be. After that, the family circle around her began to thin. Tom Parker Bowles, Camilla's son, reportedly stopped receiving certain invitations he had long expected, and his place near certain Balmoral gatherings quietly ended after the summer of 2024. Annabelle Elliot vanished from seasonal functions she had attended for almost 20 years. The wide social network Camilla had spent 2 decades building started looking thinner at every single event. Then, just before Christmas of 2024, came the moment people will remember: Ray Mill House, the country home in Wiltshire that Camilla had owned since before she ever married Charles. The garden she once called the best therapy in the world. It appeared on the market with no announcement. And here is the detail almost no one noticed. The sale was finalised within 48 hours of the listing going live. Not because the house was cheap, because she wanted it gone, fast. People do not sell their one true sanctuary on a whim. They do not part with the single place that was theirs before everything else, unless something has fundamentally shifted in how they see their own future. Sources say Camilla had been holding Ray Mill precisely because she expected to need it one day as a retreat, as a fallback, as the one address that would always be hers, no matter what happened inside the palace. The garden went first, the friendships went next, the future went last. She does not believe she needs a retreat anymore. She believes she needs the cash. Because when Charles dies, 3 of the 4 homes she now moves through pass straight to William. What is likely left to her is Clarence House, valued at around £72 million, and Highgrove at roughly £39 million. Large by any normal measure, small as a replacement for being queen. According to one version circulating among palace staff, a senior figure asked Anne earlier this year whether all of this was harsh on Camilla. Anne reportedly answered in 5 words: Diana deserves the truth now. Whether those exact words were said, the meaning lands the same way. When Anne stops protecting someone, everyone in that room reads the signal at once. Now, obviously, we cannot independently verify every dramatic claim here, and the palace will never confirm a word of it. Royal gossip turns speculation into accepted truth over time. But the visible pattern across 3 years is what it is. And the pattern lines up almost exactly with everything sources are saying behind closed doors. Camilla has reportedly demanded explanations. She has asked why the invitations stopped, why the patronages moved, why the warrants shifted. The answers she gets are formal, procedural, and final. And here is the cruel part for her. You cannot litigate a pattern. You cannot file a complaint about a feeling. You cannot demand a meeting with a man whose entire strategy is to never once say the word out loud. William has never publicly said a single negative thing about her. He is not needed to. His decisions have been speaking for him, quietly, with something close to military discipline. She won the marriage, she won the title, she won the tiara on her head at Westminster Abbey in May 2023. But the war was never about Charles. It was about Diana, and the woman who took Diana's husband was never going to win a war about Diana's legacy. And now we come back to the phone call, because here is the twist most coverage will never tell you. Everyone expects the loyal husband to fight for his wife. Everyone expects Charles to pick up that phone and defend her. He did pick up the phone. He called Anne for 40 minutes last February, and it ended with nothing because he had nothing to offer. He is 76. He was diagnosed with cancer in February of 2024, and he has held his public duties together with real discipline through 2 hard years. And that deserves to be said plainly and with sympathy. But discipline is not energy. And fighting a 2-front war for Camilla against his own sister and his own son would take more energy than he has left. He understands what they are doing. He does not blame them. He simply has no answer for either of them. And that silence is the loudest verdict of all. Because the man who put himself in the middle 30 years ago is the same man who, at the very end, cannot find one word to defend the choice. History does not forgive weakness, but it does reward the one who refuses to repeat it. That is what William is, not revenge, a correction. A correction of his father's choice to stand in the middle, and a quiet correction of his grandmother's last decision to bless it. Diana never lived to see what this monarchy could become. She got a Paris tunnel, 2 boys without a mother, a family that barely lowered its flag. But her son and her sister-in-law are now moving together, calmly and permanently, turning everything Camilla built into something Diana would have recognised as her own. So let me leave you with this. Tell me in the comments, where were you the night Charles confessed on television in 1994? Or the night Diana said there were 3 of them in that marriage in 1995? Because the man in the middle is finally being seen for who he was. And the boy who walked behind the coffin is the one writing the ending.